What's up guys, my name is Josiah Martin and I'm the Alaskan Outsider. I love getting outside here in beautiful Alaska, going on awesome adventures and documenting them for you guys. Today, we're here in Hope Junction, Alaska with Vaughn Johnson. He's a local legend and a skateboarder, and today we're going to be doing some cool tricks and also giving you 5 tips on how to make your very own skateboarding video. All right, so for tip number 1, it's establish character and location. So as I mentioned, I'm working with Vaughn Johnson today. He's an awesome skateboarder and I really want to capitalize on his talents. So when we first arrived on scene, I made sure to get some shots of him getting out of the car, getting on his skateboard, testing things out, and so you could kind of see who the person was on the skateboard. And we're also in this gorgeous location, so I wanted to really highlight that in this video by establishing where we were doing the tricks. We're not just in some suburb of city on a sidewalk, we're out here in Hope, Alaska. So I really want to capitalize that, getting some drone shots as the car was arriving on the bridge, got some epic shots of that, and kind of giving the viewer an idea of where you are filming. Now, I have a drone, but not everyone does, so you can still get those scenery shots without actually setting up a flying camera. So getting some shots of the water rushing by or the trees blowing in the wind. There's so many different ways that you can show off your surroundings without having a flying camera. So don't let that deter you. Get some establishing location shots and then get to the tricks. You're telling a story here, so make sure you have a beginning, middle, and end. So for tip number 2, it's to stabilize your footage. Now, there's many ways of doing that cheaply and expensively up to gimbals. Now, I happen to have the Ronin S today that I'm gonna be following Vaughn around with. That way I can really make sure my camera is nice and smooth and stable. But even a cheap option, you can get on Amazon and buy a C-grip handle. It's like 40 bucks and it really makes a difference to undersling your camera, and it helps you keep the camera much more stable, and that's a really cheap way to do it. Now maybe you're just filming on a GoPro Hero 7, the in-body stabilization on that camera is just remarkable. So just keeping that camera smoothly, the camera's gonna do the rest of the work and make sure you have really good footage. And sometimes you don't even have to bother with stabilization. If you're careful, you can do it handheld and have some fairly stable footage. When I'm filming, I make sure I don't take any steps because that puts a lot of bounce in the camera, but I make sure my feet are in place and then I lock my elbows at my side and I slowly move the camera to provide that movement and keep the viewer interested, but also keeping the camera stable. If all else fails, you can set up a tripod because that'll guarantee that your shot is stable. Tripod shots are kind of static for me, so I prefer not, but sometimes you're solo shooting and you still want stable shots. All right guys, so for tip number 3, we're talking about creative angles and movements. Now this tip is more of an encouragement. Each video is unique because the person standing behind the camera is unique. So I want these tips and recommendations to really spark your own creativity, so that way your video comes off unique so you can try your own ideas and not simply copy and follow the exact same moves that I'm going to be doing. But what I like to do when I'm filming these skateboarding videos is have the talent do the exact same trick a few times and film at multiple angles. So that way in post-production I can cut between the different angles and keep the viewer interested and the action more fast-paced. So for example, some of Vaughn's tricks have a setup and then a finish. So I might film the setup shot from one angle and then have him do it again. I'll go to another angle and then have him do the whole stunt, so that way I can cut between the 2 different shots and make it look super cool. So that way I have 2 or 3 angles of the same trick. Now, especially if he messes up on the first one, I can move to a second angle and cover up that mistake by cutting to another angle. Today I've got a nice wide angle lens on my GH5, but I also brought the GoPro along, which also has a very wide action camera-like perspective. Now with this wide angle lens, you want to get low to the ground and shoot up at your talent. This allows your talent to fill up more of the screen and also makes this trick more impressive as if he's getting higher off the ground. So with my Ronin S, I can underslung the gimbal and point it up at my talent, so that way I'm moving really close to the ground and pointing it up at him. Another thing you can do with your GoPro is hold it on a selfie stick, slightly tip the angle of the GoPro up, and then walk with the selfie stick upside down so it's pointing up at your talent. This allows you to change up your angle so that way your audience isn't constantly seeing the same angle over and over again. Now for tip number 4. It's to shoot in manual and switch up your frame rate. Now a lot of people love slow motion, and so do I, but it can really get overused and get old really quickly. So switch up your frame rates, and I would say keep the slow motion for your favorite tricks. So I film everything on the GH5, which runs 4K at 60 frames per second. So that way later in post-production, I can slow that footage down and use it as slow motion. But that doesn't mean I always do. Real-time footage looks great too, and you don't want to overuse slow motion. but sometimes I will change my settings to 1080p. That way I can shoot in 180 frames per second when I want some super slow footies. Or the GoPro Hero 7 can even shoot at 240 frames per second. Now it's not stabilized at 240, so make sure you move really slowly to not cause any unnecessary bounce or jitter in your footage. So as I was saying before, make sure you stay in one place and make slow movements, either slowly moving in, backwards, or sideways, so that way you can get just a nice little movement. Now also remember to film in manual. That way your exposure isn't changing halfway through your shot. If your camera is always trying to compensate for the exposure and change from light to dark areas, it's going to be changing your exposure, turning it from dark to bright, and it's very distracting and unpleasing to the eye when that happens. So shoot in manual mode, learn how to use your shutter speed and your aperture, or if you're just shooting on a GoPro, you can touch and hold the screen, lock the exposure, that way it's not changing halfway through your shot. Or another way to do that is set the min and max ISO to 100, that way it won't change on you. All right, so my last and final tip for you guys is shoot to edit. There's so many opportunities for cool transitions and neat effects in your video, but only if you plan them ahead of time in advance. If you go into your shoot without any plans and just film and then try and force those effects on those clips later, it's gonna look bad. So grab a notepad out on your phone, type down some notes on the drive out. That way you have some idea of what you want to film and some cool effects that you'd like to try while you're out on location. So like last time when I was filming Vaughn, I had him do one trick in one location and that exact same trick in a second location. So when he jumped in the air and he landed in a second location. So it was a pretty cool effect, but if I wouldn't have set up the tripod, I wouldn't have been able to pull that effect off later in post-production. Well guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found these tips helpful and Vaughn's stunts entertaining. If you'd like to see more of what Vaughn's doing on his Instagram page, go and follow him at VaughnJPhoto. He does a lot of cool skateboarding competitions all over Alaska and the nation. So if you want to see what he's doing, follow him on Instagram. And if you want to see the finished skateboarding film, click up here and watch that now. And of course, if you found this video helpful and you would like to subscribe, you know what to do. Hit that bell. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next Alaskan adventure.